A billionaire walked into a luxury gala dressed like a beggar, and what happened next exposed everyone in the room. Mocked, humiliated, and turned away, he found himself surrounded by people who valued status over humanity. But one waitress made a choice that no one else dared to make. 30 minutes later, when the truth was revealed, the entire room wished they had treated him differently. Hello fam, welcome to True Love Stories, where we share interesting and intriguing stories. Please do well to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do not forget to like and share with your loved ones. Now let's dive into the story. Atlanta shimmered under the glow of a warm spring night, but inside the Grand Meridian Hotel, the air was sharper, charged with ambition, curiosity, and quiet competition. Tonight wasn't just another elite gathering. Tonight was about Malik Carter. No photos, no interviews, no public appearances. Just a name that had taken over headlines and boardrooms in less than a year. Malik Carter, the black billionaire who had risen from nothing and now owned pieces of industries people spent lifetimes trying to enter. And tonight, for the first time, he would be seen. Inside the ballroom, the city's most influential black professionals and social elites gathered in their finest. Tailored suits, designer gowns, polished shoes moving across marble floors. Every detail spoke of success, or at least the performance of it. But beneath the elegance, there was calculation. 5 minutes, a man whispered to his associate. That's all I need with him. Across the room, a group of women stood poised, eyes occasionally flicking toward the entrance. He's young, rich, and single, one of them said quietly. Let's not pretend this is just business. Soft laughter followed. Everyone wanted something from Malik Carter. Everyone except one person. Near the back of the room, weaving carefully between guests, was Alara James. She wasn't dressed in silk or diamonds. Her uniform was simple black slacks, a crisp white shirt, and a fitted vest. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her expression focused but calm. She carried a tray of champagne glasses with steady hands, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone used to being overlooked. Alara, called the event coordinator, snapping her fingers lightly. Stay sharp tonight. No mistakes. This guest list matters. Yes, ma'am, Alara replied. For her, this night wasn't about billionaires or connections. It was about finishing her shift, collecting her pay, and making sure she could cover rent at the end of the month. Maybe even send a little extra to her younger brother. Still, she couldn't ignore the energy in the room. It felt different, like something important was about to happen. Near the entrance, security stood unusually alert. Among them, a tall man with a composed, watchful gaze, Marcus Reed, head of security, spoke quietly into his earpiece. He's close, came a voice through the comm. Marcus nodded slightly. Positions. And remember, no interference unless instructed. One of the guards frowned. Even if something goes wrong? Marcus's eyes stayed on the door. Especially then. Back in the ballroom, the music softened. Conversations dipped. Heads turned subtly toward the entrance. The moment had arrived. Alara paused briefly, adjusting her grip on the tray. Across the room, guests straightened, smiles sharpening, eyes bright with opportunity. The doors opened, but instead of admiration, confusion spread like a ripple through water. A man walked in, not in a designer suit, not in polished shoes. In rags. His coat was torn at the seams. His shirt stained. His shoes worn thin. His beard was uneven, his hair unkempt. He looked like he had come straight from the streets. The shift in the room was immediate and brutal. What is he doing here? Someone hissed. Security, another voice called out, offended. But security didn't move. Marcus Reed simply watched. The man, Malik Carter, though no one recognized him, took slow, deliberate steps into the room. His eyes moved across the crowd, observing, measuring, understanding. Then he spoke. Excuse me, he said, his voice calm despite the tension. Could anyone spare some money? I need medication. I'll leave right after. Silence. Then disgust. A man turned his back on him completely. A woman stepped away as if he carried something contagious. Another guest let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Wrong place, someone muttered. Malik stood there unshaken, watching, learning. Across the room, Alara James had gone still. Her tray hovered in her hands, forgotten for a moment. She looked at him, not the clothes, not the dirt, not the way others saw him. She looked at him. And something about the way he stood there, calm, composed despite the humiliation, didn't match the story everyone else had already decided. She didn't move yet, but she would. And that single decision was about to change both of their lives forever. The laughter didn't die down, it grew sharper. What began as discomfort quickly turned into entertainment for the crowd. The man in rags had become a spectacle, something to mock, something to reject so they could feel more secure in their own status. Did he really think this would work? A man scoffed, swirling the wine in his glass before flicking it carelessly. Red droplets splashed across Malik's already worn coat. A few people chuckled. Pathetic, a woman muttered, lifting her gown slightly as she stepped away from him. These people are getting bold. Malik didn't react. Not to the wine. Not to the laughter. Not even when someone brushed past him deliberately, knocking his shoulder. He remained composed, almost unsettlingly calm. I just need a little help, he repeated quietly to another group. Money for medication. That's all. Go to a shelter, one man snapped. This isn't a charity event. Or get a job, another added, drawing a few approving nods. Someone else spat near his shoes. And still no one helped. Near the edge of the room, Alara James felt her chest tighten. She had seen difficult things before. Long shifts, rude customers, people who treated her like she didn't exist. But this felt different. This wasn't indifference. This was cruelty, performed openly, almost proudly. She glanced toward the entrance. Security hadn't moved. Her grip tightened slightly around her tray. Don't get involved, another waitress whispered beside her. You'll get in trouble. Alara didn't respond. Across the room, Malik's eyes briefly lifted, and for a second they met hers. There was no pleading in his gaze. No desperation. Just quiet endurance. That was what made her move. She stepped forward, ignoring the subtle shift in attention as a few guests noticed her breaking from her role. Sir, she said gently as she reached him, her voice steady despite the eyes now on her. Come with me. A nearby guest let out a short laugh. You serious right now? Alara didn't even look at him. Instead, she reached out, not hesitantly, not reluctantly, and placed her hand lightly on Malik's arm. The contact alone seemed to shock the room. You're really touching him? A woman said under her breath, half disgusted, half amused. Malik looked down at Alara's hand, then at her face. For the first time that night, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, quiet, and genuine. Are you sure? He asked her softly. She nodded. You shouldn't be treated like that. Come on. Without waiting for approval, from him or anyone else, she guided him away from the center of the ballroom. Conversations resumed behind them, though quieter now, laced with judgment and disbelief. Alara, the event coordinator hissed as she passed. What are you doing? I'll handle it, Alara replied calmly, not breaking her stride. She led him through a side corridor and into a quieter corner near the kitchen entrance. The noise of the gala faded slightly here, replaced by the clatter of dishes and muffled staff chatter. Sit, she said, pulling out a chair. Malik sat. Up close, the details were clearer. The wear in his clothes, yes, but also the steadiness in his posture, the sharpness in his eyes. He didn't carry himself like someone defeated, even if the world had just tried to reduce him to that. Alara set her tray aside and disappeared briefly into the kitchen. When she returned, she carried a plate, warm food, not leftovers, and a glass of clean water. She placed it gently in front of him. Eat slowly, she said. You'll feel sick if you rush. For a moment, Malik just looked at the food. Then at her. You're not afraid of me? He asked. Alara shook her head, pulling up a chair across from him. No. I've seen worse than someone asking for help. He let out a faint breath, almost a laugh, but softer, more reflective. That makes one of you in that room. She gave a small shrug. People get caught up in appearances. Malik picked up the fork, taking a careful bite. He didn't rush, just like she'd advised. There was a quiet discipline in the way he ate, like someone used to controlling more than just hunger. After a few moments, Alara reached into the pocket of her apron. She hesitated briefly, just long enough to acknowledge what it meant for her. Then she pulled out a folded bill. "I don't have much," she said, placing the $50 on the table near his hand. "But this should help with your medication." Malik stared at the money, then slowly looked up at her. "You don't even know me," he said. She met his gaze without flinching. "I don't need to." "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice quieter now, more serious. Alara leaned back slightly, folding her hands in her lap. "Because you asked for help, and no one helped you. That's reason enough." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was real. Malik nodded slowly, taking in her words. "Thank you," he said, and this time there was weight behind it. "You've shown me something important tonight." She gave a small, almost shy smile. "Just take care of yourself, okay?" He finished his meal, wiped his hands carefully, and stood. For a brief moment, it felt like he might say more, but instead he simply gave her a respectful nod. "I won't forget this," he said. Alara didn't think much of that statement. People said things like that all the time. "Get your medication," she replied. "That's what matters." Malik turned and walked away, disappearing down the corridor and out of sight. Alara exhaled quietly, glancing back toward the ballroom. The noise had returned. The music, the laughter, the performance, as if none of it had happened. She picked up her tray again and returned to work. But something had shifted, subtle, invisible, irreversible. And neither of them fully understood it yet. By the time Alara returned to the ballroom, it was as if the incident had been erased. The floors were spotless again, the music smooth and controlled, laughter carefully placed like background decor. Guests had returned to their conversations, though now with an edge of impatience. The earlier disruption had only heightened their anticipation. Because now the real moment was close. "Alara, where have you been?" Mrs. Dalton snapped as she passed her. "Stay visible. We're minutes away." "Yes, ma'am," Alara replied, slipping back into rhythm, lifting her tray and moving between tables as if nothing had happened. But her mind wasn't entirely on her work. It lingered briefly on the man she had helped. She wondered if he had made it somewhere safe, if the money would be enough, if he had eaten properly before leaving. Then she pushed the thoughts aside. There was no time to dwell. Near the entrance, Marcus Reed straightened slightly, his voice low as he spoke into his earpiece. "Confirm arrival." A pause. "Then, he's here." The energy in the room shifted instantly. It was subtle, but undeniable. Conversations slowed. Bodies angled toward the entrance. Glasses were set down. Smiles were adjusted, perfected, weaponized. Vanessa Cole lifted her chin slightly, smoothing an invisible crease from her gown. "Showtime," she murmured. Across the room, businessmen instinctively gathered themselves, preparing to move at just the right moment. Not too eager, not too slow. The doors opened again. This time, there was no confusion. A sleek black car had already been seen pulling up outside, and now he stepped in, clean, composed, unmistakably powerful. Malik Carter. Gone were the rags. In their place was a sharply tailored charcoal suit that fit him with effortless precision. His shoes gleamed under the chandelier light. His watch caught just enough reflection to hint at its value without announcing it. But more than the clothes, it was his presence. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He entered, and the room responded. A wave of attention followed him as he walked forward, calm and self-assured. Conversation stopped entirely now. Eyes tracked his every movement. "That's him. That's Malik Carter. He's different than I expected." Within seconds, people began to close in. "Mr. Carter, it's an honor. I've been hoping to speak with you. Congratulations on your recent acquisitions. Truly impressive." Hands extended. Smiles widened. Voices softened into polished charm. Malik acknowledged them with brief nods, a firm handshake here, a measured glance there, but he didn't stop moving. And his eyes? His eyes were searching. Not for the loudest voice. Not for the most impressive introduction. For her. Malik's gaze moved through the crowd with quiet precision until, finally, it found her. And stopped. For a brief moment, the noise of the room seemed to fall away again. He didn't smile widely. Didn't call attention to it. Just a small, knowing look. Recognition. Alara quickly looked down, suddenly aware of everything. Her uniform, her position, the distance between them now. She adjusted her grip on the tray and turned slightly, trying to refocus on her work. But the room had already shifted around Malik. Darius Whitmore stepped forward confidently, extending his hand. "Mr. Carter, Darius Whitmore. I've been looking forward to this moment." Malik shook his hand. "Have you?" "Absolutely. I believe we share an interest in expansion markets." Malik nodded once, listening, but only partially. Vanessa Cole approached next, her smile effortless, her voice smooth. "Mr. Carter, welcome. Atlanta has been very curious about you." "I can tell," Malik replied calmly. Soft laughter followed. "I hope the evening meets your expectations," she added, her tone layered with implication. Malik glanced at her briefly, then past her. "Parts of it already have," he said. She didn't quite understand what he meant, but she smiled anyway. Around them, the performance continued. People showcased their wealth, their intelligence, their charm, each one trying to stand out, to matter. But Malik had already seen what he needed to see, and none of it impressed him. After several minutes of circulating, he subtly signaled to Marcus. It was time. Marcus nodded and moved toward the stage, quietly speaking to the band. The music softened, then faded. A hush fell over the room once more. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, "may I have your attention?" All eyes turned. Malik stepped forward. This time, not as an observer, but as the man they had been waiting for all night. The room fell into a polished silence as Malik Carter stepped onto the stage. Every eye followed him. Every expectation sharpened. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The speech, the impression, the opportunity to align themselves with power. Malik stood still for a second, scanning the room. Not with admiration, with recognition. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice calm, controlled, carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. "It's clear a lot of effort went into making this evening memorable." A few soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. Heads nodded. Smiles returned. But Malik didn't smile. "In fact," he continued, "I've already had a very interesting experience tonight." The tone shifted, subtle, but enough to create unease. Some guests exchanged glances. Malik stepped slightly forward, his gaze sweeping across the very people who had mocked him earlier. "Before I arrived the way you see me now," he said, adjusting his cuff slightly, "I entered this room in a different way." The confusion was immediate. "What does he mean?" "I arrived," Malik said, his voice steady, "dressed as a man you would not look at twice. A man most of you wouldn't stand near. A man some of you felt comfortable humiliating." The silence tightened. A glass slipped slightly in someone's hand. "I came to you," he continued, "not as a billionaire, but as someone asking for help. I said I needed money for medication. I said I would leave quietly." Faces began to change now, subtle panic, dawning realization. "I was ignored," Malik said. "I was insulted. Laughed at. Wine was poured on me. No one moved. I was told to get a job," he added, his voice sharpening just slightly. "Told I didn't belong in this room." Across the ballroom, Vanessa Cole's expression stiffened. Darius Whitmore looked down briefly, adjusting his sleeve as if suddenly aware of himself. Malik let the weight of it sit. "You see," he said, "it's easy to be impressive when you already know someone has value, when their name carries power, when their presence benefits you." His eyes moved slowly across the crowd. "But character," he continued, "is revealed in how you treat someone who appears to have nothing to offer you." The room was completely still now. No laughter, no whispers, just truth sitting heavily in the air. "And tonight," Malik said, "almost all of you failed that test." The words landed without decoration. Direct. Unavoidable. No one argued. No one could. Then his tone softened. Except one person. His gaze shifted toward the back of the room. Every head turned instinctively, following his line of sight. Alara froze where she stood near the service entrance, her hands tightening slightly around the tray she was holding. She hadn't moved closer, hadn't tried to be seen. But now, she couldn't be unseen. "Alara James," Malik said clearly. A ripple moved through the crowd as people stepped aside, creating a clear line of sight to her. "That young woman," he continued, "was the only person in this entire room who treated me like a human being." Alara's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. "She didn't know who I was," Malik said. "She had no reason to believe helping me would benefit her in any way." He paused, then added, "In fact, helping me could have cost her this job." A few staff members glanced uncomfortably at Mrs. Dalton. "But she helped anyway," Malik said. He stepped down from the stage. Slowly, deliberately, not toward the center of influence, toward the back, toward her. The crowd parted without being asked. Every step he took seemed louder than it should have been, echoing in the silence. Alara lowered her gaze as he approached, suddenly aware of everything. Her uniform, her position, the attention pressing in from all sides. He stopped in front of her. Up close, it felt surreal. "You gave me food," Malik said, his voice no longer carrying across the room, but somehow still heard by all. "You gave me money." Alara swallowed lightly. "I didn't know it was you." "I know," he replied. "That's exactly why it matters." She looked up at him then, just briefly. The same eyes. The same calm presence. Just without the disguise. "I was just trying to help," she said quietly. Malik nodded. "And you did more than that." He turned slightly, just enough to address the room again without stepping away from her. "In a room full of successful, educated, influential people," he said, "the person with the least gave the most." No one could meet his eyes now. "And that," Malik finished, "is the kind of person I choose to invest in." The statement lingered, open to interpretation, but powerful enough to shift the entire energy of the night. Then he looked back at Alara. Not as a waitress, not as background, but as someone who had been seen. "May I speak with you?" he asked. Alara hesitated for just a second, then nodded. "Yes." And just like that, the night everyone thought was about meeting a billionaire became about the one person who never tried to. The kitchen felt smaller than usual. Not physically, but in the way silence pressed against the walls, in the way every small movement suddenly seemed louder. The clatter of dishes had slowed, conversations among staff reduced to whispers that didn't quite hide their curiosity. Alara stood near the prep counter, trying to steady her breathing. "Girl, do you know who that is?" one of the other waitresses whispered. Alara nodded faintly. "I do now." Before anything else could be said, the kitchen doors swung open, and Malik Carter stepped in. The room shifted instantly. Staff straightened. A few people stepped back instinctively, unsure whether to stay or disappear. Malik didn't acknowledge any of them. His focus was entirely on Alara. "Can we have a moment?" he asked, his tone polite but leaving little room for refusal. Mrs. Dalton, who had rushed in behind him, nodded quickly. "Of course, yes, absolutely." Everyone back to work. But no one went far. They pretended to stay busy, ears tuned closely. Alara wiped her hands on a clean towel, suddenly aware of every detail. Her slightly wrinkled sleeve, the faint flower on her wrist, the fact that just an hour ago she had been completely invisible in his world. Now she was the center of it. Malik stopped a few feet in front of her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Up close, the contrast between then and now was almost unreal, but his presence felt exactly the same. Grounded. Intentional. Watching, not judging. "You're handling this better than most people would," he said finally. Alara let out a small breath, almost a nervous laugh. "I don't think I've had time to react yet." "That's fair." A brief silence followed, this one softer, more natural. "I meant what I set out there," Malik continued. "What you did, it mattered." Alara shook her head slightly. "Anyone could have done that." He met her eyes. But they didn't. That settled between them. Not heavy. Just true. She looked down for a second, then back up. Are you always testing people like that? There was no accusation in her voice, just curiosity. Malik considered the question. No, not always. But when you've built everything from nothing, you learn to pay attention to how people treat nothing. Alara nodded slowly. That she understood. I didn't do it for attention, he added. I needed to see something real. Unfiltered. And you found it? I did. Again, his gaze held hers. But there was something different in it now. Not just respect. Interest. Not the kind that came from status or gratitude, but something quieter, more personal. Alara felt it, and it made her shift slightly, unsure where to place herself in this new dynamic. You don't have to do anything for me, she said, choosing her words carefully. The money, I don't need it back or anything. A faint smile touched Malik's lips. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around briefly, as if acknowledging the setting, the noise, the staff pretending not to listen, the imbalance of the moment. Then he looked back at her. Because I'd like to know you, he said simply. That caught her off guard. Not because of who he was, but because of how he said it. No performance. No charm layered with intention. Just direct honesty. Alara blinked. You don't even know anything about me. I know enough to want to learn more. She folded her arms lightly, not defensively, but thoughtfully. And what if I'm not what you expect? Malik's expression didn't change. Then I'll adjust my expectations. That earned the smallest hint of a smile from her. You're very straightforward, she said. I don't see a reason not to be. Another pause. This one less awkward. More grounded. Alara glanced toward the kitchen doors, where the faint sound of the Gala still drifted in. You probably have a room full of people waiting to impress you. I do, Malik said. And you're in here. Yes. Why? He held her gaze again. Because none of them showed me who they are, he said. You did. That landed deeper than she expected. For the first time since this began, Alara felt something shift, not around her, but within her. Not pressure. Not obligation. Just possibility. Malik reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple card. No flashy design. Just his name, a number, and an email. He placed it gently on the counter between them. No expectations, he said. If you're open to it, call me. If not, that's fine too. Alara looked at the card, but didn't pick it up right away. You're really leaving that up to me? She asked. I am. That's risky. A faint, knowing look crossed his face. So was walking into this room the way I did. She couldn't argue with that. After a moment, she reached out and picked up the card, turning it over once in her fingers. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Malik gave a small nod. I should get back out there before they start rewriting the narrative without me. Alara let out a soft exhale. They probably already have. I'm sure they have. He turned to leave, then paused briefly. And Alara? She looked up. Thank you, he said again. This time it felt different. Not like gratitude for a single act, but for something that had already begun to change the course of both their lives. Then he walked out. The kitchen doors closed behind him. And just like that, the noise returned, the whispers grew louder, and the world started moving again. But Alara stood still for a moment longer, the card still in her hand, realizing that what had started as a simple act of kindness had just opened the door to something far bigger than she ever expected. Alara didn't call him that night, or the next. Life didn't suddenly pause just because something extraordinary had happened. The morning after the gala, she still woke up early, still checked her bills, still tied her hair back the same way before heading into another shift. But things weren't the same. Everywhere she went, she heard whispers. That's her. The waitress from the gala. The one he called out. Some people looked at her differently now, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled envy. A few suddenly treated her with a level of respect they had never shown before. Alara noticed, but she didn't let it change her. At least, not right away. 3 days later, after a long shift and an even longer moment of staring at the card on her small kitchen table, she finally picked up her phone. She hesitated once, then dialed. It rang only once. Ilara. He had saved her number. She blinked, caught off guard. You were expecting me to call? I was hoping you would. There was a pause, but it wasn't awkward. Are you busy? He asked. I just got off work. Good. Then let me take you to dinner. She almost laughed. You don't waste time, do you? I don't see the point in it. Another pause. Then, okay. That dinner was nothing like she expected. No over-the-top luxury. No attempt to impress her with wealth. Instead, Malik chose a quiet, understated restaurant. Somewhere comfortable, somewhere real. And more importantly, he listened. He asked about her life, and he didn't interrupt her answers. He didn't redirect the conversation back to himself. He didn't treat her like someone who needed to be fixed. Ilara told him about growing up with her mother, about losing her, about learning early how to stand on her own. She told him about her younger brother, about the jobs she had taken just to keep things steady. Malik didn't respond with pity. He responded with understanding. Not because their lives had been the same, but because he recognized the discipline, the resilience, the quiet strength it took to survive without shortcuts. And when he spoke about himself, it wasn't the version the world saw. It was the truth. The long nights. The rejections. The moments where things could have gone very differently. I didn't have anyone opening doors for me, he said at one point. So I learned how to build my own. Ilara smiled slightly. Sounds about right. From that night on, something steady began to grow. Not rushed. Not forced. Real. Malik didn't try to pull her out of her world overnight. He stepped into it first, picking her up after shifts, walking with her through neighborhoods she knew by heart, sitting with her in spaces where his name didn't matter. And Ilara didn't lose herself in his world either. When she did step into it, she did so on her own terms, observing, learning, questioning. He respected that. More than that, he needed it. Because for the first time in a long time, someone wasn't drawn to him because of what he had, but because of who he was when he had nothing. Months passed. Then a year. Ilara went back to school, something she had put off for years. Not because Malik told her to, but because he made her believe it was possible without sacrificing everything else. He supported her, but never controlled her. She challenged him, kept him grounded, reminded him that success didn't excuse disconnection from reality. They built something balanced, something honest. When Malik proposed, it wasn't at a gala or in front of cameras. It was quiet, intentional, just like the moment they met. Are you sure about this? Ilara asked, searching his face, not for doubt but for truth. I've been sure since the night you saw me when no one else did, he replied. She said yes. Their wedding reflected them, not the expectations of the world. Family, close friends, no spectacle, just meaning. And when they had their child, a daughter, they made a decision that mattered more than any business move Malik had ever made. They would raise her to understand people, not status, to value kindness, not performance. Years later, the story of that gala still circulated. People told it as a lesson, a warning, a moment of irony. But for Malik and Ilara, it wasn't about what everyone else got wrong. It was about what they found. Because on a night built on appearances, a billionaire found the only person who treated him like he had none. And a waitress made a choice that rewrote both of their lives. Finally, we have come to the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, do well to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.